Look, settings are either the parts of books you think the least about or the parts you find most intriguing. It depends on who wrote it and how it's executed, obviously. But I mean on the plot pyramid, which I'm assuming you were taught sometime in middle school English, setting falls under the same category of exposition with background of characters and story introductions, but hardly anyone talks about settings with that same level of importance. Which is something I think is a disservice in a way, because world building is like a necessity in a story, but somehow it's treated like world building only matters when you're making a setting or a world from scratch, which it matters a bit more then, but even when building on existing settings and atmospheres, you still have to world build there for the setting to be good. Because in the same way there's a good way to introduce exposition, like character stories and bits of plot, there's also a bad way to implement your settings. A very bad way. Because settings, whether you notice it or not, are practically essential to making the plot of a book whole. It's why you notice when world building is bad and when you notice when it's good. I mean, yeah, I get sometimes to a reader if the focus is on plot, the setting not being explored or implemented naturally probably won't matter to you, blah, 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 but I can't let this lackluster world building continue without complaint. Do better world building. Make dynamic settings. It's good to do that, I promise. They are essential. For one, unless the characters live in a blob of an idea, the setting is going to give context to their general environment, motivations, and conflict. Also, very simple way to introduce themes and tone in a snap one and done kind of deal, because settings should reflect that. It should either parallel or mirror it, like someone surrounded, still feeling alone. You can do that with the compactness and simultaneous isolation of a city, or someone feeling ostracized or out of place within the quote-unquote perfect community. That's literally just the suburbs. Or, a character who feels lost, and so the place they're in is dark, foggy, something easy to lose your way in. And when I say that, something comes to mind. It may be an image or a color or a general vibe, but settings should do that. That's just generally setting a scene. It doesn't have to even be the main focus or even specific. It can just be an aura left to the imagination of a reader. But it has to be there. And if you want a dynamic setting, with it should come an atmosphere or a general vibe, if you will, or just morph together aesthetics. Those kinds of things really bring a setting to life, when that brings out the theme and mood if you do it well enough. And on the reader side of things, it is much easier to get wrapped into. If a setting feels dynamic and real, if it has its own atmosphere and an aesthetic that plays into that, it creates more of a palpable image in your mind. It feels real and like something you can truly immerse yourself into. I do know, though, that personal tastes are going to play into that and how well that goes, and the author's execution of that and those atmospheres and those aesthetics will definitely be a factor. For that, I think it's important to note where those atmospheres and aesthetics are coming from. Like the Romantic literary period. It came soon after and it took heavy inspiration from the French Revolution, more calls for abolition, and heavy social change. That context adds layers to the themes that literary period played into and those atmospheres utilized, especially through that sort of flowery language, nuances of individuality, and the common man. We have also periods like realism. Everything is a lot more stark, especially in the American realism period, because it came right after the Civil War with those ideals and calls for social changes, still holding that same amount of importance. And settings are utilized to play into those themes of dire social change and that general atmosphere, but it is that atmosphere that is so different. They're utilized in that same dynamic, heavily layered way, but the execution of it really sets it apart. And I'm bringing those up because those two periods are definitely taught in like high school English classes, at least from American perspective, at least, if not obvious, I'm coming with that kind of perspective in mind, but it's a lot like painting periods and painting movements like that, where you can look back and you can point to the environment, politics, and the goings-on of that time and say, yeah, those definitely impacted these trends. And whether or not the categorization of movements or periods like that is actually helpful or just too generalizing is fully up to you. This is literally just a segue to me saying today's literary trends, for better or worse, are shaped by the internet. And look, when it comes to the internet, I'm not coming on here to get on a soapbox and tell you about the flaws of the World Wide Web. I don't care enough to do that. There's too many nuances and a million-page long pros and cons list for me to cover. I don't feel like doing that. Right now, I'm just talking about the internet as a neutral thing for communication. That's what it is to me. So I don't want you to think that this is going to be a random internet bad rant. I'd be a massive fucking hypocrite for that. But what I am going to say is that the internet doesn't exist in a vacuum, and its massive influences isn't just limited to online communities and people who want to share their interests, hobbies, or anything like that. There's, in effect, an invasive species in the environment. And as always, it is capitalism. Ads, all of it. You can see it on YouTube. It's certainly gotten worse over time, but that definitely has to be somewhat expected because corporations, capitalism, it is just like that. And the internet is a great vessel for it, especially on the marketing sides of things. TikTok, good heavens, it is a business buffet. And when we tie that into aesthetics and things like trends, corporations and, people who just generally want to make money will do what they can to cash in on that trend. And people have been doing that since before the internet. Capitalism will always capitalism. But I I don't know why. The internet just makes it worse. I think it's because it is much more effective. And I don't know, there's just this disconnect, especially with major brands. Even if they're using like regular people, ambassadors, authors, micro-influencers, whatever, there's always that disconnect feeling. And trust me, I'm not saying that to shit on people, but you do have to recognize that those brands affect everything, because to them, it's always going to be about profit and relevance through whatever means possible. That's where that disconnect kind of comes from. And with aesthetics really blowing up within the internet and in those online communities, capitalism was going to capitalism there. On the fashion side of aesthetics, we have those kind of micro trends, fashion to keep up with them, and almost sort of cannibalizing in on itself. And on the literary side, we have what I like to call the dark academia effect. Now, when I say dark academia, what comes to mind? Maximalist Gothic architecture, cobblestone buildings, a foggy morning with dew still on the grass, writing in pen on faded yellow pages, going to a dingy bookstore, tweed jackets, wool, brown, navy, and forest green paints, dedicating yourself to a craft that will never reward you. The obsession, the toxic relationship of academia and scholars in a system meant only for the elite, the isolation, the privilege. Great. Okay, so do you think of that in the 824 emotionally distressing kind of way, or the Tumblr 2012 hashtag tortured artist picture of Dorian Gray in killing your darling mood boards kind of way, or the TikTok old money girl boss magic murder in a boarding school kind of way? Because I promise you, with all of those, there's a difference. There's overlaps too, but there's keen differences. Mostly because this online obsession with dark academia, fashion-wise, literature-wise, and vibe-wise, really blew up and can be pinned back down to The Secret History by Donna Tartt. But to be clear, that quintessential Gothic horror-esque atmosphere surrounding elitism, the classics, and academia as a whole existed before then and continues to exist now, especially with more nuanced critiques of educational systems and that idolization of Greek and Latin civilizations as quote-unquote civilized society in comparison to the vast histories we have of plenty of other countries that just aren't Europe. But do you think publishers and social media marketing actually care about that? No, they care about a catching elevator pitch and taking off tropes that will reach a large, dedicated community, creating some semblance of pop culture relevance, and most importantly, getting you to spend money. So I want you to really think, and I mean this, when was the last time you read a dark academia book? You know, the kind that was like viciously marketed to you online. Not necessarily organically, but through that TikTok algorithm, Goodreads Discover pages, Instagram Reels, I don't know, Book Tumblr or Twitter fingers, whatever. When have you read one from there that was like actually good? Now think hard here, because sometimes plot-wise it can be like fine, but the settings are flat and just like, you know, the sets of CW shows or the backgrounds of Miraculous Ladybug. I'm saying this with love, mostly, but I need us to do some major introspection here on if we actually find that kind of writing acceptable, entertaining, what have you, or if it's just talked about enough. I mean, damn near every dark academia book TikTok, Reels, and Tumblr keep trying to recommend to me as the pillars of the aesthetics are, like, not good. Ninth House? I mean, I understand Leigh Bardugo went to Yale, but you'd think with that in mind, she'd write the setting better. That world building was just not good. Atlas 6. I thought the world building was just Or, you know, A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. At least with that, I kind of liked the building sketches it gave on the covers. But boy, that school was not utilized well. And I don't mean this in the I can't stand dark academia books kind of way, because Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, even with plot issues, it had some of the best fucking world building I've ever seen. It trapped you in that gothic horror, and you felt the same haze and confusion the main character did. You felt that numb, sluggish feeling and that quiet dread. It's truly a staple to me of atmospheric pieces. So I do forgive the boringness and the poor plot simply based on aura. So don't come to me and say, well, maybe you just don't like dark academia. I do, when it's done right enough. I just find that with a lot of current dark academia books, there's hardly that gothic atmosphere. It's just rich people and murder/magic or secret society in a boarding school. And when that's the main setting, you'd think the setting would be utilized more, or just better written, or I don't know, somewhat entertaining. But like what I said with those poor CW and Miraculous Ladybug sets, it feels flat, and it comes with a certain disconnect. Of course, the main issue here is not people wanting to read popular or modern dark academia book takes. That's really not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to use a tangible example here and just kind of mention it as a phenomenon instead of a whole issue. And yes, I do know there are some prevalent issues with how that aesthetic is utilized, mostly in those hashtag girlboss old money romanticization and the Tumblr 2012 hashtag torture artist circles. But the main thing I'm talking about is just a general oversaturation of popular aesthetics / popular tropes within online book communities, and it being recommended through that pulley system of the publishing industry's free social media marketing and that intense disconnect. Because when you like certain settings and aesthetics and atmosphere and genres, you're going to seek those out. And that's not an issue. That's just being a consumer. But when the people in marketing and those publishers can see which genres and aesthetics and trends are most popular and profitable, they're going to go and push the books they know will make money, get people talking. And that is what's constantly going to get pushed to you. And hardly ever are they good. What I'm saying is, imagine if the dystopia craze and boost after the Hunger Games and those movies were released. Imagine if that happened in the time of TikTok. All those books with horrendous world building, static settings, plots that were just straight up horrible. Imagine that was constantly on your For You page. Or all those monster fuckers coming out of the woodworks after Twilight happened. Imagine all those like extremely bland, toxic romances just constantly being pushed to you on TikTok or Instagram Reels. That's what I mean by that oversaturation and capitalism doing what capitalism does, which is routinely screw over the consumer. So I'm not going to be putting the flack on consumers for wanting more of what they like, and I'm not even going to be putting all the flack here on authors for their bad world building. I mean, I'm still going to complain because, my God, put some depth in it, but mainly I'm going to be putting the flack on the biggest factor into this, which is the publishing industry and social media marketing as a whole, because I promise you'll start noticing it. It'll follow blooming aesthetics, new popular trends, new hot genres in these thriving online communities ripe to be potential consumers. And never, and I truly mean never, will it be without negatives. That kind of system has flaws. And I know this main thing is just meant to be about world building, but that's just one facet of a really strange system here that will probably continue as long as it is profitable and keeps companies in some semblance of relevance. And again, yeah, for a rant that was just meant to be shaking you by the shoulders and begging, pleading for better world building, I feel like I did go a bit off. Just don't fall for the ploys of marketing as much as you can and expect better writing from your authors. I mean, yeah, it's a creative venture, yes, but it is a product. And considering fanfiction is free and doing it so much better, it can be done. And if you don't know if the world building is bad or if you actually enjoy the settings the book is even using, explore more genres. And I don't just mean by like the traditional means or anything like that. I mean, AO3 has great atmospheric pieces you can find, though how popular that fandom is will impact that, as well as some great original pieces. And if you don't like any, invent something better in your mind, setting-wise or otherwise. I mean, there's plenty of books I read in my time where I just thought I could fix you. And would I ever open up a Google Doc and test that theory? No. I just have imaginary standards. Again, that's just called being a consumer. Yes, again, creative products, but still products, which I can't believe some authors don't realize this, can be critiqued. Hater, constructive, or otherwise, I actually implore you to do that. Because these Goodreads reviews, well, simply some of you are just being too nice. And I don't know, it feels a little bit misleading sometimes. Just, my point is, you don't have to accept bad writing, whether it be lacking execution, bad pacing, poor world building, or character work. You don't have to accept that. Find the settings and genres and themes that do what you like and you enjoy, and seek those out actively. Feel more free to discuss these kind of things in book spaces. I mean, you can say which settings and trends you like or dislike in my comments. I don't care. It's fun. Talking and complaining about these things is fun. You should complain when something is bad or you have nitpicks. We need more complainers in this world, creatively or otherwise. I just don't think we'll be getting any of that on Goodreads. Again, feel free to complain in my comments or just discuss, whether it be about the topic of settings or just you want to say shit. It's fun. Free algorithm boost, and I like hearing your guys' thoughts. It's what makes this a book club. Speaking of, if you want to become a member, it is literally just a fancy word for a subscription or just tapping into the book club playlist. And I mean, if you want to follow me anywhere else or just bother me, it's probably in the description, whichever floats your boat. Either way, I hope the rest of your day is particularly atmospheric. And with that, our book club meeting is adjourned. We you out.